Welcome to another episode of the 100% podcast with me, your host, Harry Purdy. Today, I'm joined by a new guest, and I'm very excited. I got the excited and the guest bit mixed up then, but it's absolutely fine. He is the creator of the adherence amplifier. He is an IFS speaker, award-winning coach. His name is Mr. Lewis Potts. Welcome to the show, my friend.
Thank you very much. You've done that a few times, haven't you? You're used to doing that intro.
Yeah, you've just got to roll with it as well when you stumble on those words. So the reason Lewis has said that is because he's just started his own podcast, right, mate?
Yeah, mate. Yeah, it's nowhere near as polished as that yet.
We will see how you find it. Obviously, this is going to be like 125th episode, I think we're recording today.
Jeez.
So maybe, mate, you might take something away from the way that I host. Who knows?
Oh, absolutely. I'm always learning. Always learning.
I think that's a beautiful point, right? Straight away, always learning. Has that always been the case for you, or have you always been like, have you always had that open mind?
Not really. Not really. No, to be fair. I went through. I've kind of like not a rough upbringing, like family life or perfect family, but from quite a rough area. Quite a closed-minded area for sure. But as soon as I could, I started to broaden my horizons, get out bigger. I moved out of like a little village into a town, into a city. So always developing, definitely, but not learning was never my thing. I was just one of those kind of like, I was naturally gifted. Do you know when you get those people that are quite naturally gifted up until like GCSE? So like smashed all my GCSEs, no revision, all that sort of stuff. Then went to do my A-levels and fucked it. We're all right to swear, yeah?
Yeah, of course, mate.
Yeah. I absolutely dropped the ball at A-levels. So from that point onwards, I'd actually convinced myself that learning wasn't for me. But I think it was one of those typical cases that it's because the stuff that I decided to do at A-level, I actually wasn't that interested in.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think you could speak to everybody, and if you sat them down in a specific class, they would go, well, this isn't for me. Like school, right? When I look back at the lessons at school, the ones that I did the best in was the ones that I enjoyed. The ones that I literally hated were the ones I did shit in. There's no fucking surprise that that's the case, is there? So, but when you put your effort and your thinking into something that you enjoy, of course, you're going to take the time to learn from it. So is that with the whole fitness thing, with your mindset, with now you're coaching coaches essentially, right? And helping them make sure that their clients are adhering to their programs and things like that. That must have been some process to get to the point of where you are now. But where did the learning start personally?
Yeah, so it was just kind of like going back to what you were saying there about learning about the things that you enjoy, like thinking back even to A-level, right? I picked up psychology just because I thought it would be interesting. I'd never done anything like that before. Now looking back, psychology is the one that I actually got the highest grade in, which was the one that fascinated me. All the other things that I picked up because I thought I had to: biology, English language, that sort of shit. Absolutely, not for me. The learning personally started, so I'm sure we're going to cover it, right? But I went through quite a significant period in my life, significant like transformational period, really, where I, in very quick succession, started losing a load of weight, found out that I got a heart condition, had to go through some pretty rocky stuff, and had to work on myself. So I think the learning for me, where I realized that I wanted to learn and I wanted to develop about this stuff, it's kind of because it had been forced on me almost. I was like, I need to do something with this, otherwise I'm going to flounder. And it wasn't looking pretty at the time.
Yeah, it's interesting because when people ask me about my journey, there was almost a trigger point to when I started wanting to lose weight consciously. Right. As I think everybody goes through those phases of, like, for me, it was the Special K diet, or I'm going to take out carbs and literally hate what I was doing. But you'd see the scales move down a stone in 2 weeks, you go, fucking hell, I've cracked it. And then bang, it goes back on again. What was the trigger point for you when you started to lose that weight? Because I seen that photo of you at the barbecue, right? And you've got that beer, and I'm like, fucking hell. Like, what an unbelievable transformation. Was that like a point where it started for you?
Yeah, well, so the thing for me, right, is I'd played contact sport my entire life from being, 8 years old. I started playing rugby. 9 years old, you start contact. So 9 to 16, I played rugby. 16 to 28, where I had to stop playing sport entirely, I played American football.
Wow.
So the positions that I played was all like being heavy helped. Definitely not. It didn't help with health wise, but for sport for sure helped. I played prop, and then I second row, and then number 8 for rugby. So in the forwards, and then American football defensive line. So I tried to lose weight a few times, like half-assed, but I kind of came to the conclusion that I just wasn't that bothered. Like the benefits of me being the big guy at sport and also in my group of friends far outweighed the costs of being the big guy, right? The overweight guy. So where it actually started to click is I had a typical rock bottom moment that I think a lot of people that get to the size. So at my heaviest, I was 152 kilograms. So I don't know what that is in stone. It still confuses me why people.
What I was 23 and that was 138 kg. So
yeah. So what's that? An extra 14, so an extra 2 stone on top of
yeah.
that. Yeah. And again, up until that moment, it was like I've spoke about this a few times recently in content and on other podcasts that I've been in. For me, it was very much like 1 second I was fine. This is how quickly it happened. 1 second I was fine. The next second I wasn't. And that second for me, I was at a festival and I was surrounded by a load of people that I'd never really met before who were all really successful and in great shape and all that sort of stuff. And I just had this weird realization. I was like, I don't feel comfortable. And that was it. It was almost like black, then white. And that was white, then black, let's say. From that moment onwards, I woke up the next day. So the Monday morning after the festival, typical hangover day, smashed dominoes and ice cream and all that sort of stuff. The Tuesday, I was like, right, let's get this shit sorted. And it was very much like I almost feel kind of like fortunate in a way that for me, it was that easy. And some people, when they hear me say that, I don't think they really believe me, but it really was that easy. And then from there, it was just, I mean, don't get me wrong, it took 18 months to get the weight off, but I didn't really struggle getting the weight off because I think the realization and the way that I'd felt was more than enough at that point to actually keep me moving. I mean, it got a little bit easier, right? I lost the majority of the way through lockdown and there was nothing going on and all that sort of stuff. But like, I'm not saying it was the easiest thing in the world, but yeah, it wasn't once I'd made my mind up, I didn't really struggle with weight loss.
It's a lot I could ask you about in that little segment there. And what an amazing transformation. And I think you are right, mate, in saying that you're lucky. But when you say it was easy for you, I'm sure there were moments where there was a little bit of stagnation. Potentially we'll use the words, you're like, it's part of your coaching, right? On the wagon, off the wagon kind of moments. How did you deal with them?
So I actually only, and I can pick these out for you, I actually only had 2. And I remember them because obviously, because I was so heavy, because I was so overweight, for me, I lost the first 15 kilos just by not eating like a knobhead anymore. Like no tracking, no excess exercise, nothing like that. Literally just stopped eating the sort of stuff that I knew deep down that I shouldn't be eating. Got nearly 2 stone off me. So from that point, it then started to slow down a little bit. All I then quite literally did then was start tracking, and because I was so far back from square zero, I had all these little changes that I could make that made things a lot easier for me.
Yeah.
I stagnated. It was around Christmas. So I started the weight loss in June. The first time I stagnated was December. It was around Christmas. Obviously, all Christmas, right? Food, drink, all that sort of stuff. At that point, again, straight away, I was like, I know that I'm nowhere near done. I know that I'm nowhere near where I want to be. So that's the point where I found a coach. That's the point where I got a coach. So again, I think something that I did really well is I jumped on that early. What you'll know in your line of work and my line of work, sometimes people leave that too long. I think sometimes people think I'll get a coach when I've tried everything. It's like, no, because you're playing all your cards early at that point. So that was the first time. Then the second time was actually after I'd done a photo shoot. And again, it sounds weird to say that I'd lost 75 kilos without really slowing down. But for me, the timing was, it was 2019. I slowed down at Christmas. I got a coach. I was with a coach. I started with a coach in February. Lockdown started in April. So at that point, there was no more restaurants for me to go to. I wasn't going out and getting pissed all the time. It was just like, you could go to the shop once a day. And I definitely wasn't like, before that, when I was at my heaviest, I'd be going to the shop 2-3 times a day, buying chocolate, all that sort of stuff. Couldn't really do that. So don't get me wrong, the environment and almost like circumstances were on my side in a weird way. But I think both times what I did really well is I just looked at things objectively and went, right, what do we need to change?
Yeah, because one thing that I still believe, even though there's the amount of information out there with regards to the average intake of calories that a male or a woman should eat in a day, obviously they're only relevant to fucking 25% of the population anyway.
Yeah.
But the knowledge around actually what's in food, and
Yeah.
for younger people as well, you kind of build these bad habits. And I look back at like you talking then and looking back at my own journey, I'd like have moments of like horrendous binges if I look back at it now, without really, obviously there's a reason I was binging. It would be for like me and my mate would watch wrestling. You've got an Austin 316 t-shirt on, and I'd like go to the supermarket and get this, get that, like Ben and Jerry's crisps. And you think about all of that stuff that you'd eat in a 4 or 5 hour pay-per-view show. I'd probably eat in like the next 3 days worth of calories just like that.
Absolutely, mate. Yeah, it's so. Again, looking back, I had this conversation recently. Like, I used to have like a game day ritual after I'd played American football, and I used to order the same thing every single time, and it would be large mighty meaty from Domino's, big green dip, chicken kickers. Well, like at the time, this is before I kind of really knew about calories. Like, there's 700 calories in a green dip from Domino's.
Yeah,
just in the dip. Do you know what I mean? So I'm thinking like, I think the pizza's like 2,300. So the pizza in the dip, without the kickers, the cookies, the Ben and Jerry's, I'm smashing 3,000 calories in, like, and it not filling me.
Yeah, and it mad.
It's crazy. It's crazy to look back. But you're right. The point you're about to make there about the lack of education, it's wild.
Because on she won't mind me saying, on Saturday I ran the ultra and I was looking at the carb content of jelly babies. So I wanted to know for the day, like how many at a time, if I saw them on the route, like how many to give me, because obviously every hour it was really important. I got my carb intake correct, and I was like, bang, grabbed the packet, found it straight away. And like her reaction to me knowing where the info was, how to find it straight away, this is my mum, was like, bloody hell, how often do you check this out? And I was like, well, like I have to check it out, otherwise, like who knows what foods. And again, if you just take that as that's an example of my mum who's been around me a lot of my life and on this journey, so she's got a half an idea, but she's not got a full idea. If you knock that on to the rest of the population who actually know nothing and don't have somebody who's done something positive in terms of weight loss or their own fitness journey, the education must be pretty much minimal, even though there are people like you, me, all of the other lads within Alliance who are doing a similar kind of thing. Obviously, you've got your bigger influencers out there with huge followings spouting the same kind of stuff. I genuinely believe there's more to be said for focusing and putting more basic level content out there than actually going into the harder nitty gritty stuff around like specific nutrition, etc. Do you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I first became aware of, I can't remember anything at school about actually calorie counting and what you need and stuff like that. Obviously, calories unit of energy, yes, the science side of it, but not when it came to food. It was mad. For me, I only even discovered it. It was actually James Smith.
Yeah, same.
I discovered this back through James Smith in 2016, 17, probably 2017. I was actually living in Australia at the time. This loudmouth kid had popped up, and by that point, I'd already tried to lose weight fucking loads of times. So many different ways, so many different ridiculous methods. That was the first time it actually stuck. I remember losing and again, because I was so big, I remember losing like 20 kg and thinking that I'd made it and then stopping and then gaining all the weight back again. But still, it was like the first time it was like, actually, wait, I can still eat burgers and I can still do this and I can still do that. And it was the first time that I ever believed then, knowing when I pick something up that I like to learn about it. Like this is now, not then. Knowing what I knew then, I was like, oh, actually, maybe this is possible for me. And that was the first light bulb. But it only came with the education and the knowledge around calories and how to work the numbers out and how to put them into MyFitnessPal. And I remember it was so fucking liberating, mate.
Yeah.
So liberating to learn that actually maybe you can do this. I mean, I didn't do it that time. It still took me another couple of years to sort my shit out, but it was like almost like a light at the end of the tunnel. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, like I completely agree with you, and like it sounds really similar in terms of it. And what I know, he's like, people have mixed opinions about James Smith, but honestly, the impact essentially that he's had on my life at the start, when it was around the physical side of my health, incredible. And I remember being at work, and it was the first time that I took my meal prep, I guess, essentially seriously, where I would be like, wow, I can like make this whole meal, and I'll know specifically how many calories are in each pot. And like, and some people, it doesn't work for some people, right? But the science behind it is the same for every person. Mate, going away from calories and stuff and going back to the point about being on the wagon, off the wagon, which obviously myself and you have had, well, you've had two occasions where it's happened, and I've had a few over the journey that I've been on as well. When it comes to clients and ensuring that they don't keep going on and off the wagon, how do you try and stop them from doing so?
Yeah, I get. So just before we kind of dive into this, I don't want it to sound like I've only ever fallen off the wagon twice. Like, since I've lost the weight, I've been on and off the wagon. But in the process of losing the weight, it was just my Tuesday. Yeah. I don't want people to think of me like, oh, this guy, like, yeah, do you know what I mean?
No, I can. But
yeah, I'm now more on and off the. Well, I mean, I'm on the wagon, I guess. But I've been on and off the wagon a lot since, and I guess that's where my kind of coaching really found its feet. Was like, actually, this is the thing that I'm experienced at dealing with. So this is the thing that I'm going to teach. So before I started the Amplifier, obviously I had my own coaching company. And then it was actually through that I realized, actually, I'm pretty good at this whole adherence thing of like working with people to stick to the plan, as it were. Yeah. So going into then developing something around that, basically just through my time coaching, I've just developed a load of tools, a load of resources, different little like worksheets and prompts and questioning techniques and stuff like that I was running with my clients. And I learned very, very quickly through coaching those, and you'll know this as well, right? That weight loss is very little to do with calories and training. And it's actually to do with managing to stick to whatever you're sticking to, whether you are calorie counting, whether you're intermittent fasting, whether you're whatever, insert any method here. It's actually making that work for your life that makes a difference, not the mechanism itself. So that's really where I started to get. I got fascinated by it. I got so fascinated by it. It was like, why can some, like you've just said, why can some people do this? Why can some people not? Why do some people stick to it? Why do some people not? And it all comes down to like lifestyle stuff. It all comes down to emotions. It all comes down to self-awareness is the number one. If I could pick one thing, it's self-awareness, right? So what I then start to do with my coaching and what I do with the Amplifier now is, if I can nail that self-awareness with a client, it doesn't fucking matter. Well, it does matter what calories you give them. I'm not saying you can eat whatever you want, but you give them the right calories, you give them the right training program, you could not touch that again. As in not change it. You stick to the self-awareness thing. You develop that. You develop autonomy, which is it. For me, it's self-awareness first, then it's responsibility. So like the 5 values in order of my coaching were self-awareness, then it was responsibility, then it was commitment, personal development, and autonomy, in that order. That's the order that I used to work on things with people first. Become aware of the situation first, accept responsibility, which is the hardest one out of the 5. Accept that, unfortunately, this is on you. Yeah. Commit to it. Then we can start to develop. And then after that is the whole autonomy thing, which is now you can make decisions for yourself, well-informed decisions for yourself.
Because the self-awareness thing can relate to the fact that, yeah, you're aware that you've just made a really bad decision, and that chocolate bar that you bought for the week in the fridge has just lasted 20 minutes. I guess that's what you're related to. It could also be related to the fact of the self-awareness around the fact that today I feel like I need a hug, and those are the days that normally I will go and grab that chocolate bar and eat it all as well. Is that right?
That's absolutely it. Yeah, it's absolutely it. It's being able to look at yourself and being like, this is how I am feeling. This is potentially why I am feeling like I am feeling. And then on the back of that these are the options that I've got. These are the things that I could do to make myself feel better, for want of a better word.
Because again, I'm sure you've experienced it as well. It's also amazing in terms of the general population, the amount of general people that don't know that negative feelings are just a part of life, if you get what I'm saying. And I know that we're really lucky because we've got a world-class coach, and we're, as you say, when you want to know about something, you fucking go in. And I'm the same. When it came to when I first had my depressive moments and like really horrendously negative thoughts around myself and all those kind of things, I was like, right, I need to learn about this because I want to be aware about what's actually going on between these two ears and behind the eyes and all those kind of things. But actually, the education on the fact that it is normal to feel negative in some parts of your life just isn't out there. We get told 24/7, yeah, it's okay to not be okay, but we don't get told, do you know what? Like, this is how your emotions work. 1 minute you're going to be up here, the next minute you're going to be all right, and then the next minute you're just going to feel sad, and you won't be able to put your finger on it. But it doesn't mean that you need to go and soothe those feelings by X, Y, and Z.
Yeah, I think people like to pathologize this stuff, right? People like to be like, whether part of me says yes, maybe people do think that you should always feel good. Part of me thinks people can't be that naive, but you don't know. You don't know.
Do you know what? That's a really good point, mate. It's a really good point.
But for the people that maybe do feel they should at least feel neutral all the time, maybe people want to feel good or neutral, but don't want to feel bad. Nobody wants to feel bad, right? But what I think causes a lot of issue at the minute, and something that I'll talk about a lot, is mental well-being, mental health, and also mental illness. I'm okay to have that conversation. I've never been diagnosed with, well, there's a weird story about where I kind of did, but kind of didn't, which I'll tell you in a second.
Yeah, go on. We'll go on to that.
with a mental illness. So I'm fortunate enough to say that. So I understand that it's coming from quite a privileged position in that sense. But I'd also say that as soon as I became aware of mental health, I've proactively fought against slipping into real kind of like dark places myself. Like, obviously with what I went through in my heart, I went through a couple of rocky stages, but again, I took control, I took charge, did something about it. But I think that as soon as people do feel bad, that's it. Oh, I'm really sad. It's the end of the world. I'm depressed. I'm really anxious. I'm this, I'm that, I'm this, I'm that. It's like, are you, or do you just not feel good? Like, I think one of the points that you made about feelings is fascinating. Like, I only really recently started to learn about, there are so many different feelings. Have you ever looked at the feelings wheel?
I haven't. I may have. But
it's fascinating, right? So basically, it's a multicolored wheel, and there's like an inner circle, an outer circle, then an outer circle, and it starts off with like maybe 5 or 6 core feelings inside. So like anger, sadness, happiness, that sort of stuff. Then off of those, it branches more feelings and more. And there's hundreds and hundreds of names for feelings, right? And I think a lot of people struggle with pinpointing exactly how they are feeling at the minute, like these days, because people think, oh, I'm sad. Are you sad, or are you disappointed? Are you lonely? Are you all these different versions of sad, whereas people just go sad. It's like, yeah, but exactly what? Because it's something that I use with clients a lot. You look at the feelings wheel. If you can pinpoint how you are feeling, that's the first step to being able to figure out what you need to do about it.
Yeah, because there's a difference between being sad that your dog's just died or sad that your football team's just lost.
Yeah.
And without downplaying people's emotions, sometimes when you ask, like, what is your feeling? I don't know, like, let's just go with stressed as one, because that is one. And you go, okay, what are you stressed about? That stress doesn't necessarily link to anxiety, for example. That stress is just because you've had a shit day at work, which everybody has, and that's normal. That's a normal level of stress to have. But if you're stressed because you're tens of thousands of pounds in debt, your relationships on the rocks, and I don't know, something else is going on, then maybe we need to actually do something about it. Whereas I think there's a lot of misconstrued meaning behind different feelings and words and negative emotions. A negative emotion is a negative emotion, don't get me wrong, and I'm certainly not downplaying it, but I think because we are almost programmed by what's thrown in front of us that we should be feeling all the time, that when, even if it's like a little negative moment, people are taken aback by it, and it almost knocks their confidence with how they're feeling. And
yeah, I
sometimes,
don't want to make it sound like I'm downplaying it, but like you said, it goes back to what we were saying about this food. It's lack of education.
Yeah.
Lack of education. At what point in school do you actually talk about this stuff?
Yeah.
I know about this because I've almost stumbled across it in my own journey of development. It's not something that I had forced in front of me. It's kind of like now, and again, echo chambers count for a lot, right? The people that I follow on Instagram, all that sort of stuff. I'm now aware of this stuff because of a chain of events and that I went through myself and wanted to find this stuff out for myself. So I'm not for 1 second saying that it's people's fault, because it's not.
No,
it's absolutely not. But there are resources out there that maybe people just don't know about, and I don't know what the answer is to get them out in front of people.
Yeah, either. No, I agree. And also I would absolutely say that, like, in terms of my upbringing, I was really privileged because I had two parents that if I wasn't feeling great, or I had a bad day at school or college or whatever it was, even if it was related to their breakup at the time, like, they wanted me to talk about it. Mm-hmm. Whereas on the flip side, there are people who have not necessarily had that relationship with people who have brought them up, where feelings and actually being like having your own problems are normal to bring up. And I guess that's an issue that you need to develop your own way of bringing them out and speaking about them when you're an adult. But as we're aware, speaking about it sometimes isn't enough. And like you say, with your own issues that you've had, you then have gone on to take control, which I think is a really nice segue into the next point, mate. You did have open heart surgery, right, in your most recent journey. So I've done a little bit of research. You had an aortic root replacement, mate. Tell us about how the fuck this happened.
Right. Okay. So first of all, it's I had a bicuspid aortic valve. So the aortic valve, the main valve that pumps the blood out to the rest of your body. Every time your heart beats, it opens, it lets blood out, and then it closes. It's meant to look like it's meant to be tricuspid, so three cusps. So it was meant to look like a Mercedes-Benz sign. So it's meant to look like that, right? Mine only had two cusps, so it was pretty much just like a line straight down the middle. What that meant is that those cusps of my valve had to work harder to open and close. So over time they calcified, and what that meant is I was then, every time my heart beat, I was regurgitating blood back into my heart, which was obviously stretching the wall of my heart. The scary fact that a lot of people don't know is that 1 in 100 men have got a bicuspid aortic valve. So it's not a rare thing. It's 1 in 100 men have got a bicuspid valve. However, you will only really find out about it if you live a lifestyle like I was, high intensity sports, really overweight, heart's having to work harder more often, which sped up the calcification process, which sped up the aneurysm, the regurgitation, which ended up developing into an aneurysm, which was the thing that could have ruptured and killed me. You will only ever find out about it if it kills you, or basically if you are lucky enough to find it, which I was. So I was playing sport in Australia. I was playing American football in Australia, and I woke up one morning and basically I tried to say a sentence and all the words came out in the wrong order. It was weird as fuck, right? But my partner at the time had a medical background, and she was like, straight away, hospital now, go. Obviously I was playing American football, load of hits to the head, quite overweight. I don't think she knew what she thought at the time. They rushed me and I had a load of different tests. I had like a CT, a MRI, brain scans, all that sort of stuff. I know now they were looking for a blood clot. They thought I'd had like a minor stroke or something. They pulled me in a couple of days later and was like, we've not found a blood clot. Good news, you've not had a stroke. However, bad news is you've got this thing, completely unrelated. The speech episode and the heart, completely unrelated, but lucky enough to find it. It's just something that you're born with. It's just something that 1 in 100 men are born with, and more often than not, if you've got it, the males in your bloodline will have it as well. Luckily, my dad didn't. So as soon as they found it on me, I had to basically ring my dad up in England and be like, Dad, found this thing. You need to go to hospital and get checked. Luckily, thank God, he didn't have it. So yeah, it was just kind of like went on from there. The guidance in Australia, which is where we'll go back to the mental health thing that I was telling you now. The healthcare in Australia is fantastic for people that are traveling. You get something called Medicare, so a lot of it is subsidized. So I was really, really fortunate in that sense. It just turned out the doctor that I had wasn't the most switched on. So he said to me, because they checked all my arteries and everything, my blood pressure was fine, my carotids, which is like the arteries and stuff, are all good. He basically said to me, you're fit, you're healthy, like crack on, play on. So I carried on playing, I carried on partying, I carried on doing all that sort of stuff. It's the thing that a lot of the Premiership footballers are dropping dead with. So he told me, you sound, mate, crack on, you'll be good. So I did. I carried on playing. He then, and I only know this since because I had to request my medical records from Australia when I came back to England to give to the NHS and show them the tests and the results and all that sort of stuff. He also diagnosed me with anxiety without actually telling me, which was, so yeah. So in one of the notes I'd gone in, and I remember specifically where I'd gone in, as soon as I'd found out about this thing, I'd started feeling my heart. It is what the best way that I could describe it. And also hearing sounds when I was asleep and stuff like that. And he basically just downplayed it. It was like, no, there's no chance. Like, carry on, you'll be fine. I found out when I pulled the notes back off him that he'd put down, I've got anxiety and I probably needed CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, but he never actually told me that. So that's my weird story where technically somebody said I had a mental illness, but I never actually knew about it. And
yeah.
Which I think there's a talking point there, and I probably get a lot of hate for because I didn't know about it, so I didn't feel like I had.
I was going to say that, mate. I wonder if he subconsciously knew what happened when you tell somebody that they've got anxiety.
I mean, judging by some of the other notes that I pulled back from him, I think he was just not great. I don't want to give him that much credit, but yeah, I only found that out actually when I was writing my IFS talk. I only found that out like 2 months ago because wow. I was pulling through all the notes because I wanted to use some of the notes in my talk to explain what had happened to me, and I saw it. I was like, what? So what the fuck's all this about? So yeah, anyway, I carried on playing. I moved back from Australia, went back into the NHS system. They did all the tests and stuff like that. Then I got pulled into an office in 2019, in November 2019, after I'd already started to lose all the weight. And they basically said, yeah, it's pretty bad. The term they used was borderline intervention. We're going to get you on the list to have open heart surgery. From that point, I carried on losing the weight. So a lot of people think that I lost the weight because of the surgery. I didn't. I was already losing the weight. The two were kind of unrelated. But because I'd lost all the weight, it had taken a lot of the pressure off my heart. So they then turned around and was like, right, you're good. You're safe. The aneurysm isn't developing. We'll keep monitoring you. You might have to have this surgery when you're like 60, 65 years old. But what that meant is like playing small for the rest of my life. Like I wasn't able to exercise. I wasn't able to train, no gym, nothing, because obviously a spike in blood pressure could have been pretty, well, I say pretty bad. If it had ruptured the aneurysm, I'd have been dead. So then the next battle started of me having to convince them to let me have the surgery, which eventually they did. But again, the pandemic was going on. So trying to get in for a surgery, which what technically at that point wasn't an emergency, was a fucking nightmare. So then I battled that for like 18 months. Like it was from the time of them telling me about it to me kicking off enough to get the surgery. It was 2021, December 2021 that I had the surgery.
What were the things that you were saying that you think made them say yes to getting it done?
I actually had to, so they weren't against it, but because it's quite a significant surgery, because it's quite a major surgery and there's obviously a risk of death, basically they were like, we only want to do this surgery if we have to. However, what they were letting me do is I was going into cardiology, I was speaking to different people, I was having conversations, and I actually managed to meet a surgeon. And I got this surgeon sat down, Paul Waterworth, absolute fucking gangster. I managed to get him sat down, and I just said, look, I don't want to say he was like the head of whatever, but he was fairly high up in the hospital where I was going to. I was My local hospital, luckily, is the Northwest Heart Centre. So it's like pretty good for stuff like this. So I was having a conversation with him and I was like, look, mate, I was like, he told me the percentages of it was still relatively small. It was like a 3% chance of death or something like that. But again, they're like, if we don't have to do it, we're not doing it. And I remember just saying to him, look, I'm really kind of struggling to get my head around it. I can't kind of get my head around the fact that I could have this surgery now when I'm the youngest, fittest, lightest, and healthiest that I will ever be. Surely my chances of recovery now are better, blah, 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 blah. One of the reasons that they didn't want to do it is obviously they had to replace the valve. So I had the choice between a bovine valve, so about a valve from a cow, or a mechanical valve. Bovine valves are better because you don't have to be on warfarin and stuff like that, but they denature, so you have to have it done every 5 to 7 years. Oof. So he turned around and said, right, okay, I'm happy to do the surgery. I agree, but I don't want you to pick a bovine valve. I want you to pick a mechanical valve, which technically, touch wood, should last for the rest of my life. So it was more.
It was metal. Sorry, mate.
Yeah, it's metal. Yeah.
Metal. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah. So I've got a little, it's mechanical. There's no like engine or motor in it. It's just quite literally a little valve that when my heart beats naturally, it's stitched into my heart. When my heart beats naturally, it opens and closes like a normal valve would. So you won't be able to hear it on this microphone, I don't think. But when you stand next to me and it's quiet enough, you can actually hear my heart clicking, which is weird. Oh, mate, I hate it. Like, I absolutely hate it.
So that leads me on to the next question with it. So with having open heart surgery, how old were you when you had it, mate?
So it was December 2021, so I was 31 years old.
31 years old, knowing that you didn't really know what the outcome of it afterwards was going to be, whether it's going to be successful. Now you've got a ticking heart, literally got a ticking heart. And there's also questions that you still have unanswered around what you can do, what you can't do, all these kind of things, mate. So alongside all those challenges, how have you managed to process them and move on as best as you possibly can?
Very good question. Yeah, there's definitely still unanswered questions. So for me, this is where I discovered Paul. So I was going through this already. I knew I'd lost all the weight. I knew that I was going to I knew that I was fighting for the surgery. And then I just happened to listen to Paul on James's podcast, which just happened to be the same day or the day before that he released his Audible book, the Paul Mort Will Save Your Life. So within 2 days, I remember it was a Thursday and a Friday. The Thursday I'd listened to this podcast. The Friday the book got released. So I downloaded Audible. I didn't have Audible at this point. This was like my entry into personal development. I didn't have Audible. I downloaded Audible. I got the book, which is 6 hours long, and I listened to it in one day. I remember I started walking, and I think I must have gone on like 2 or 3 walks that day just to blitz this book off. That also happened, it's almost like he planned this stuff, right? That also happened to be the day that I started getting peppered by his ads. And Unstoppable 28 was on sale. So I joined Unstoppable 28. So within 3 days, I'd discovered this guy, listened to his book, paid for his course, done the pre-work. Mate, it's mad. Like, I work in this line of work. I know how it works. It frustrates me so much. I'm like, I know exactly what's happening here and I can't help myself. But yeah, so I joined the program, and that was my kind of first real venture into things like journaling, into things like listening to mindset trainings and all that sort of stuff. So I was like, fuck it, I've got nothing to lose. This surgery at some point, I didn't know when it was going to be at this point. It was in the summer of 2021 that I discovered Paul, right at the start of the summer. So I then ended up on the June transformation, then straight into Alliance, and then it was do you know what it was? Like Audible, you download it, you get a free token. I'm now in Elite X, obviously, which is like the highest level. It's the most expensive free audio book I've ever fucking downloaded in my life. Because off the back of it, it was like, yeah. I mean, I'm not knocking it. It's quite literally changed my life. So it was just from that. And then obviously alongside that, he recommends other stuff, right? So I discovered DeMartini and Byron Katie and that sort of stuff. So it was just like almost a path that was laid out, but I just couldn't get enough of it. So I was journaling, I was doing the work, I was doing all that sort of stuff. I was as physically and mentally prepared as I could have been when I got the call for the surgery, which they phone you and they're like, do you want to open heart surgery in 2 days? Like, it's that fast. So yeah, it was very much that sort of stuff.
Canal, mate. That's pretty mad. We speak about I did mention it and you agreed there's some unanswered questions. It's related to what you can and can't get away with on the exercise front at the moment, right? You want to prove the experts wrong, so to speak. Am I right in saying that?
I mean, that's one. Yeah. I'm not going to try and say no. What it is basically is obviously since the surgery, something that I knew that I was going to have to get that came with it, but I didn't realize the kind of repercussions is that I'm now on warfarin for the rest of my life. Obviously got a mechanical valve, slightly higher risk of clotting. If the valve clots, if my blood clots around the valve, it will quite literally stop the valve working. So it's pretty bad. I knew I was going to be on warfarin, but again, because it was such a kind of like from them saying, yeah, we're going to do the surgery. Yes, you're having a mechanical valve. I had like 5 days maximum to kind of like get my head around that. I was just like, yeah, fuck it, get it done. It was only since the surgery that I've kind of like been getting my head around that. So obviously played contact sport my entire life. What warfarin does is it thins, well, people call it a blood thinner. It's not actually a blood thinner. It stops your blood from like clotting, scabbing, that sort of stuff. So higher risk of bruising, higher risk of bleeding, higher risk of passing out if blood is too thin, higher risk of clotting if blood is too thick. So just a bit of a shit show, to be honest. So I kind of knew that there was never going to be a chance that I could play any sort of contact sport again. But the guidance, and I also get why, and I don't want to make it sound like I'm speaking bad on the NHS whatsoever, because they quite literally wouldn't be stood here without them. But the approach is very much cotton wool. It's don't risk it. Like a lot of the stuff. So after getting discharged from cardiac rehab, the guidance that there was just don't push it. Just be safe. But my kind of stance is the average age for people that get this surgery is 65 years old. With the mechanical valve, sorry. With the bovine valve, it's even older, 70s plus. But the average age of people that get the mechanical valve is 65 years old. I'm younger, I'm fitter, I'm healthier, I'm a lot mentally stronger. I know myself. So something that I've been struggling with, and I'm kind of getting my head around it slightly more now, is this idea of not being able to, of not calling the shots of my own life. So I'm just slowly starting to push the boundaries a little bit. So I say slowly, like I tried golf, just wasn't for me. I tried walking basketball, just wasn't for me. So now I'm dipping my toe into a little bit of boxing, not like actually fighting, but just training and stuff like that, just to move my body and learn a skill and stuff like that. The next challenge, I think, is, well, I say I think I've paid for it, so it's Everest Base Camp.
Yeah, boy.
They're not very happy.
That was my next question. Was I can't imagine your surgeon would have been too fond of that idea, or
he doesn't know yet. I've actually got my next echocardiogram on Monday, where I've got to officially let them know. I've been going private because so I completely understand their stance, right? Every single time I ask if I can do something, the best example I can give you is my family are talking about going to Disney in the next couple of years. My cousin's got a son who's 8 years old now. So when he's a little bit older, go Disney, go on the roller coasters, all shit like that. I was like, can I even go on roller coasters? And the answer is always the same. We don't know. Best not.
Fuck me.
But I get it. I get it, right?
Yeah, I get it too. It's like, yeah, that was you just saw an instinctive reaction from me there, because that instantly, especially with what we get taught, right, mate, is from Paul, is take control on the things you can. But actually, like when it comes to physical stuff and the fun element and the fitness element, you can't really, or by the books, you can't. How have you switched that? Like what perspective have you got from that?
The issue is, right, is there aren't many people my age, first of all, with this thing. And even if there was, it's unethical to test. Like, they can't take somebody with a mechanical valve who's on warfarin and put them on a roller coaster and see if they survive. Do you know what I mean? Like, It was all sorts of stuff. I asked about that. I asked about skydiving. I did a skydive in Australia. Best thing I've ever done in my life. One of the best things I've ever done in my life. Would love to do another. Scuba diving. They just don't know because of blood pressure, blood viscosity, all that sort of stuff. So I've now started going private. I actually had an appointment on, what day was it? Tuesday just gone, where I sat with the doctor and done quite a bit of reading, done quite a bit of research. There's one woman that actually summited Everest with a mechanical valve, just one. But to me, that says, well, if she can summit Everest, I can go up to base camp. I sat in front of this. I took my girlfriend. I sat in front of this doctor, really nice guy. And he said, how can I help you? And I explained. And I said, so I'm not here asking if I can do it. I'm asking you to tell me how. Like, I'm going to do it. I just need you to let me know how. Like, what do I need to know about my blood? What do I need to know about altitude? What do I need to know about that? So I've actually got an appointment with a hematologist soon. So
I'm just guessing here. Not a not educated guess, I think they'll call this. They're going to give you a blood pressure machine to constantly...
It's actually not pressure. So basically, I've got it actually here. So I know this is a podcast and not everybody will be able to see, but
I thought it'll be on YouTube.
All right, okay. So for all wants and purposes, I have this thing. It's a little machine, right? And periodically I have to take my blood and see how thick it is.
Oh yeah.
I then let them know, and they will adjust my warfarin based on that. There's a range that it needs to be in. The issue is altitude makes your blood thicker, which is obviously increased risk of clotting, which is not great. So I could take the machine. My stance is I can take the machine. I could check my own blood. However, no signal in the Himalayas to basically text back and be like, "This is my blood. What do I need to do with my?" Yeah, so we'll see, mate.
That's scary yet exciting, right?
If it had not been done before, I think I still wouldn't be not doing it, but I'd be a little less sure of it. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm terrified. My girlfriend asked me the other day, she was like, after the appointment, she was like, "You're a bit quiet, what's up?" I was like, "I'm fucking shitting myself." But for me, I think this is where I've always worked differently. For me, that is screaming at me that I need to do it. I've always done mad shit, played American football on the highest level in Australia that you can play. The highest. Played for the best team in the country, flying around the country, playing sport, like in front of hundreds, sometimes thousands of people, which doesn't sound like a lot, but for American football, it is. Like
in Australia. Yeah.
Yeah. In Australia against a load of Polynesians. So Maoris, Samoans, Tongans, and ex-rugby league players, ex-pro rugby league players. So it was fucking mad. And I've always had something in my life, whether it was sport or whether it was DJing, that I used to get the buzz from. And I've been really lacking finding that at the minute. Public speaking is giving it me. Don't get me wrong. That's the thing now. And that's why I'm throwing myself headfirst into that as well. But the fact that I'm terrified of Everest Base Camp is everything is screaming at me. That's the thing you've been looking for. Do everything in your power to make it happen.
I respect you for that, mate. Hugely. Something that I think I know the buzz that I think you're trying to look for. And unless you've had it, it's hard to describe, isn't it?
It's pre-game. It's that pre-game feeling. I don't want to say like, I don't really believe in nerves. I believe that nerves and excitement physiologically feel exactly the same. The difference is how you frame it. So pre-game nerves, I don't really kind of subscribe to this idea of nerves. Like for me, nerves and excitement, well, for everybody, nerves and excitement physiologically feel exactly the same. The only difference between nerves and excitement is the lens you put on it. Literally, the only difference. It's the story that you tell yourself about it. So I was walking around at IFS and I got there on the Thursday night. I spoke on the Saturday, and every time somebody saw me, "Are you nervous? Are you nervous? Are you nervous?" I'm like, "I'm fucking buzzing. Like, I can't wait." I'm genuinely really excited. Like, it feels exactly the same. You just get to choose how you frame it. So I don't want to say that it's the pre-game nerves that I've been looking for, but it is that feeling. That's the feeling that and every time I think about it now, and it could still happen. I've got this I've got this appointment with this hematologist. I could sit down with this hematologist and go, you are fucking on crack. Don't do it. It could still not happen, but everything at me at the minute is screaming, that's the thing that you've been looking for since the surgery. Let's go.
Yeah. And I feel like these, I say it loosely because obviously, again, it's not necessarily fully in your control, but these things are there for a reason, mate. And I know you're a massive believer in walking the walk for clients and being the shining light, which I think when you're a coach, you want to do. And it's one of the reasons I took part in an ultra marathon, because I wanted to prove that you could do.
I've got so much respect for you for that, by the way, mate. I cannot think of anything worse. Like,
but, yeah, but also I get it, and I get why people would say, and so many people have said they couldn't think of anything worse. But the things you're describing, the pre-game nerves or the pre-game excitement, I didn't sleep the night before. I didn't sleep the night after. And there's a reason why that was. I was so fucking hyped, and I said on my story the other day, one of my biggest. I don't know. When you play a cup final, you don't really remember too much about it. When you play a big game, you don't really remember too much about it. You remember the important things, so to speak, but the minutes that tick by where you're just trotting through, you're in complete flow, I guess is the word. On the day, I remember so little about the 34 miles. So little. I remember the incredibly big hill. I remember one of them. I remember occasionally looking at the sea going, oh, that looks nice. But apart from that, the finish and the start, that's it. And that's my biggest regret. But I think just on the subject of nerves, I do think that there's something to be said for framing it as excitement. But also, if you do look at it at nerves, for me, I'd be saying, okay, you're nervous. What can you do to give yourself the advantage over over those nerves? So for me, it was prepping like fuck, getting the practice in, getting the miles in the legs, having the right equipment, knowing that my mum and her husband were there in the right places with all of the times that I was expected to get into these checkpoints with food and change of clothes, all those things. And like, that's just on one thing. That's just an ultra. But with this journey that you're about to go on, I'm being confident. I'm saying you're about to do it. You're doing all the right things too, mate. You're doing your research. You're speaking to the right people. You're investing in the right people. You're not gonna just do it on a fucking whim and hope for the best. And that is essentially taking control out of really what could be deemed as a really negative situation that you're turning into a really fucking positive one.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's all you can do, really. That's all you can do. I think that's probably the biggest thing that this whole heart situation taught me, is that for me, I don't want to sound like a control freak, but I wanted it to be on my terms, which is why I actually actively pursued the surgery. At any point, I could have just been like, oh, well, they've said I can have it at 65 years old. I'll just live very carefully for the next 30 years. It just wasn't me. It was what can you control? Cool, that's what we'll deal with. Like, objectivity is being able to look at what's actually happening and respond to that is a fucking superpower, mate.
Yeah, because as well, from what I see of you, obviously we've only spoke a few times, getting to know you more on the pod today, but your stories, like, you're always having a laugh with your missus. You're always, like, from what I've seen and what I know of you, you're quite a fucking all-in kind of guy. You like to have fun. You're from Manchester area. I'm
from Rotherham originally. Live in Manchester now, but yeah.
So like tough, gritty. Been there, done that with the lads, I imagine, through your early adulthood, and that creates a character, right? And I'm only guessing now, but if somebody took away or tried to take away through whatever reason, like, I don't know, my running or my football or my coaching, my podcast would be the one where I'd be like, I'm going to do everything within my power to make sure that this part of me continues. Because essentially, when you're creating yourself, as a character without getting caught into ego too much. You being told that you got to play it safe and you've got to be cool isn't necessarily you being your authentic self, is it?
Yeah, absolutely. No, it never was.
Yeah.
It never was.
Yeah, and that's got like, mate. Honestly, I really fucking hope for you, mate. We'll stay in touch, and you got to keep me informed now. It's like, yeah, if I need to know what's going on because I'm invested, fully invested, mate. You speak about IFS. You spoke at IFS, which is, I take my hat off to you, mate. It's definitely on the vision of Harry Purdy in the future. Fuck knows what I'll talk about. 23 stones ultra marathon would be a good tagline, maybe. Or ultra marathons, because it's not going to be the only one I ever do. But
I was going to say, have you got the bug now? Is that the thing?
I think anything where I can take myself out of my comfort zone is a thing.
Yeah.
And there's like, so you've mentioned skydive. I've been on about doing it for ages. I wouldn't say I'm scared. It would give me the pre-match poos, defo, but like, or anything like that. And mate, what is mental is my Facebook and Instagram feed now is just challenge this, challenge that. Like they know that I'm ready to, they know that I'm looking for something. The powers that be know that I'm looking for the next challenge. So we'll see. I really want to do a triathlon.
Yeah.
That's because, again, it's something I've never done. Could I swim over a mile at the moment? No. So that's something that will only ever improve me. I'm an okay swimmer, but can I swim in open water for that amount of distance? Who knows? Can I cycle however fucking many miles it is and then run a marathon? That's definitely a thought wave that's going through my head. But I think that's essentially where we're at, mate, isn't it? Within our lives, is that we know that the best way to function this funny thing that is life is by continually trying to learn and test yourself. And for me now, it's huge. And I can't envisage a life where I'm not pushing myself in some way.
Yeah, that's what personally I've been struggling with, massively struggling with. Like every time I turn up to an Elite X meeting, we talk about our biggest struggles. Mine's always that I've got nothing where I can actually challenge myself physically, mentally, business wise. Yeah, everything's going well. Like I'm not going to sit here and be like, yeah, I'm just stagnating, because I'm not. But physically, that's the one that I've been missing for sure. So yeah. Whether it is base camp, hopefully, and then after that, who knows what. There is a limit with stuff that I can do, but I'll constantly be trying to find it.
Yeah, because you're certainly not going to go in a boxing ring, right? That's yeah, that's just like there's a level of, I think it's emotion against common sense. You may want to, but common sense gets in the way. However, if we can get you prepared for base camp with a level of common sense, then happy fucking days.
And for me as well, part of it, what I'm actually quite enjoying is I'm having to learn about my own condition. I'm having to learn about this stuff. So like, I can't wait to sit with this hematologist so I can ask him questions about blood viscosity, which is, again, going back to the thing I did biology at A-level and fucking hated it. Now it applies to me and makes such a big difference to my life. I can't wait.
Yeah, isn't that mad?
Yeah.
Isn't that mad? When it relates to you, as like I always sit here and say, the reason that we do this coaching stuff is because we've been through the same challenges as the clients that we work with and stuff, and we want to help them and show them our tasks. Like, mate, in the future, you may come across a client who has had the same issue as you, and you're going to be so well briefed to be able to help him.
Yeah.
Or them, that person. Yeah.
Touch wood. I mean, I actually worked with one by coincidence as well. By coincidence, like he didn't come to me because I'd had the heart surgery, and then I was talking to him on a call about it, and he was like, "Yeah, I got the same thing. He's got the same blood monitor and everything."
Wow.
Yeah, it's like I said, 1 in 100 men. 1 in 100 men, and that's that. Not to go back to the heart stuff. That's the thing that, like, for me, it almost made me feel, because it's such a high chance, it almost made me feel not special about it, which is what I needed.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? It was like I don't want to be treated like a special case. I want to know. I've always been the same with everything. I want to know about it, and I want to know what I can do about it. That's it.
Yeah. Makes total sense, mate. Makes total sense. Bro, we've been shooting over an hour. It goes so fast when the conversation's so good on these bloody podcasts. It's unbelievable.
That has gone really quickly.
I always end with 2 of the same question. So the first question is, well, we know one little sneak peek already that base camp is on the horizon. My question is, what's next for Lewis Potts?
So kind of similar to you, I'm really enjoying this whole podcasting at the minute. So I've just started a podcast called the Everyday Achiever Podcast, where I just want to talk to normal people that are doing cool things. Like there's no, that's all I've got at the minute. I'm like 4 episodes deep. Really, really enjoying that. Business wise, yeah. So I run the adherence amplifier, which is we kind of very briefly touched on. So if there's any coaches that want to learn how to keep your clients on the bandwagon a little bit more successfully, let me know. Again,
Yeah, perfect.
Other than that, mate, it's seeking out the next speaking opportunity outside of Everest, which we've talked about. It's seeking out the next speaking opportunity, whatever that may be, wherever that is, whoever it's to. That's the thing out of everything really that's lighting me up at the minute is the whole public speaking stuff.
Classmate, sounds amazing. And I'll definitely, do you know what I'll do, mate? Is if there's any events that I know of, I'd say that you're quite far away, but if there's anything southwesterly based, I'll keep you in mind. And there may be like a little idea that I've got on the horizon as well that I'll definitely keep you in mind of. And then
it's exciting. I'll travel, mate. I enjoy it that much at the minute that I'll travel. I've still not been paid for one yet, and I will travel to do it. I enjoy it that much.
Well, there we go. I'll definitely keep that in mind, my guy. The final question of today's podcast, mate. What is the greatest bit of advice you've ever been given?
The greatest, oh mate, that's an absolute banger. So there are so many that are jumping out already. The best bit of advice that I've ever been given is by my dad. And it's quite simple. It's you get out what you put in.
Love it.
That's it. For me, effort is something that I talk to so many people about, whether it is the coaches that I'm mentoring to grow a business at the minute, whether it is the clients that I'm working with, like myself, my friends, like the only thing that nobody can take that nobody can take away from you, the only thing is your effort.
Mate, do you know what is I think is an incredible little moment on today's show is you're the second guest in a row that's said that their best bit of advice ever has come from their dad, and I think that's a nice touch, mate. That's a lovely bit of like it's nice to know that, like, it'll be great for your dad to know, and John Hall, who I had on previously, it'd be amazing for your dads to know that actually out of all the people you've worked with, it's still your fucking dad that's giving you the best bits of advice. Yeah,
absolutely. I want to ask you before we stop, because you spoke to a lot of people. 125 episodes.
Yeah.
What's the best bit of advice you've had as an answer to that question?
It's hard because can I do two? One from one from an absolute guru, which was Dax Moy, and it wasn't necessarily an answer to the question, but it's something that I will always remember now. If you don't have your own definitions to words, you will always struggle with putting meaning to stuff. So that relates back to, we were talking about love. It was quite a deep episode, and when you don't feel loved, it's not essentially that you're not feeling loved. It was, what do you define as love that you're not feeling? So yeah, it was deep, mate, but it really got me thinking. So like now when I describe,
Dax
it was
is a gangster, mate.
Yeah.
Dax made me cry in a bar in Manchester.
Bloody hell.
Do you know one of those conversations? I think we were talking about my parents, to be fair.
Yeah.
One of those conversations where I was like, "Oh shit!" Like, holy fuck.
Yeah, and so I'm gonna say, recently a young woman called Georgia Green came on the show, and she's a dance coach, and she said that it was related to perfection and it not existing. Practice doesn't make perfect, but it makes you better. Like, practice will never make perfect, but the more you fucking practice, the better you're going to get. So don't try and chase perfection, just try and chase getting better. Yeah,
I like that.
Yeah, and it was just one of those things. Like, I think when you do something for a long period of time, and it was because the reason it was brought up, and maybe, well, it wasn't just because of that, it was just something that she'd been taught. But why it resonated with me was I'd recorded an episode face to face with her. She was sat literally there, and basically my sound like whatever the fuck it's called, my sound thingy mabob just failed about 7 minutes into the episode, and I didn't clock. Like I was just so in the zone with our first chat that we did an hour and 20-minute episode. She left. I came back up because I was like, fucking hell, that was class. And then went to play the episode back, and all you could see was me talking and her talking with no sound. And obviously that was a huge thing. Like over 100 episodes in, I was like, fuck's sakes, teething issues with all of this class equipment now that I've got at home. But what it basically made, like the point was really relative to me at the time. Like you've done all of this work, you've invested in all of this stuff to grow the podcast, but you're never going to fucking have it like, even though it's called the 100% podcast, even after 300 episodes, you're still only going to be 85% good or like 80% good. There's still going to be percentages that you can gain. And yeah, I'm going on a bit of a tangent from your one question, mate, but I think
no, mate, I love stuff like this. I love stuff like
you've just flipped it. You're getting an insight into the Harry Purdy episode of the everyday achiever podcast. Yeah,
absolutely, mate. I'm genuinely really excited to get you on. Like, obviously, yeah, I want to talk about your journey of weight loss and through to the ultra marathon, but you've talked to that many cool people. I'm quite interested to see what nuggets you've got.
I think what's interesting about it is that everybody, and I said it almost before we started recording, doesn't really matter what following a certain person's got with regards to what they've got from the output of life or input of life. Like everybody has their own little lessons that they can share, no matter on like a smaller scale to a big scale. Obviously, the people like Dax Moy, they're going to have groundbreakingly inspiring insights. But actually, like, even if somebody's teaching locally or they're not that well known, that one little bit of advice or one little nugget of education about themselves or that they've learned about others that they share on the podcast could inspire and educate somebody else. And it genuinely doesn't matter who you are. That's what I find fucking incredible.
That's something that I've learned as well, is like you as the listener, me as the listener will take the thing that resonates most with them from this. And that won't be the same thing for everybody. Like whether it's podcasts, whether it's personal development, whether it's Paul's trainings, I've rewatched certain trainings and redone certain books and got a completely different thing from it every single time. And it's the thing always that I need the most at the time. So yeah, like I don't think it matters how big the name necessarily is. Like you said, if there's somebody listening to this that needs something and this thing is in there, it doesn't matter who said it, right? It's the same thing.
Yeah. And what I would say as well, one thing that I have learned from speaking to and even watching certain people. So Peter Sage, for example, who we saw at Stamford Bridge, like speaking to you, speaking to Paul, speaking to Dax, like all of these guys have made a living out of like we are making and trying to make a living out of what we do, right? That means that our stories are well created, well crafted in a way that we want to tell them. Other people don't necessarily have that way of telling those stories to potentially not inspire, because a badly told story can still inspire, but they don't have it crafted in a sense where they're asked it often enough that they've managed to their words into a way that they can like do a great big talk in front of 500 people, but the story's still the same nevertheless. That's as well another little takeaway that I've got is like these stories, their stories, how well spoken they are, it doesn't matter. The message at the end of it is all that matters.
I think that's why I love podcasts so much, and that's why I'm enjoying it so much, is conversation. Like you learn much more, I find, passively. Like I pick more up from listening to two people speak than I do listening to an audiobook.
Same as me, mate. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mate, I honestly have enjoyed our chat today so much. It's been incredible. It's amazing to learn about you and your story, and like it's mega inspiring, mate, that you still want to push yourself physically with the challenges you've had. So hats off to you, and genuinely, mate, like good luck with the next meetings, and I really hope they give you some good news. Lewis Potts, where can people come and find you if they want to come and find out more about you?
Yes, mate, it's Lewis_FBU on Instagram, and now very recently the Everyday Achiever podcast on Spotify.
Where you'll see me soon.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to message you straight after this. Don't worry.
Today has been another episode of the 100% podcast with me, your host, Harry Purdy, and today's guest, Mr. Lewis Potts. You can find new episodes from me every Friday on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. If you are watching on YouTube, please click the like and subscribe button, another little wave from me on YouTube, and make sure you click the follow and subscribe button on Spotify and Apple Podcasts as well. And if you have really enjoyed today's episode, please drop a 5-star review. It does go a long way to helping the show. Final one from me today. I've just released my 14-day free 100% journal. If you want to transform your life, energize yourself, and get you thinking in ways that you've never done before, drop me a DM saying journal and I'll get it sent over to you. Have a great day. Speak to you soon.